Across the sea from Britain at the cloudy crossroads, where the warm airs of the Gulf Stream clash with the cold winds from the Arctic, creating a bubbling cauldron of sunshine and storm, lie the 6 counties of Northern Ireland, part of the United Kingdom. This is the ancient province of Ulster, cool, beautiful, and steeped in a turbulent history which its people cannot forget. These scenes amazed everyone who thought that riot and revolution just happened in more distant and exotic lands. But only the petrol bombs and the TV coverage are really new. The violence is part of a bitter legacy of hatred and suspicion which has existed in Ulster for over 300 years. It's the outward sign of a problem that has plagued the province for generations. The tragic division of the inhabitants of the same land, not by color or race, but by religion. Sunday in Armagh, the ecclesiastic capital of Ireland. The congregation streams from St. Patrick's Cathedral after morning mass. Up to now, the most important thing about someone's life and character in Ulster has been their religion. For in the Ulster eye, this determines their politics and their loyalties, whether they belong to the Catholic minority or, like these people at Armagh's other cathedral of St. Patrick, to the Protestant majority. July the 13th. And in Belfast, the biggest of the processions which are held the length and breadth of Ulster to celebrate Orange Day. Why are they still celebrated with such enthusiasm? Why is there so much ill feeling on these occasions? It all started in Ulster's second city, Londonderry, the only surviving example of a complete walled city in the United Kingdom. This compact little city, which long ago overflowed its stone boundaries, lies at the head of the Foyle estuary in the far northwest of the province. The confident pile of the Victorian Guildhall has stained glass windows which illustrate the history of this turbulent town. It was at Derry in Tudor times that the merchant gentlemen from London established themselves to exploit the benefits of the new policy of plantation, which had at last made possible the conquest of Ireland by the English. The rich agricultural land had been colonized or planted by loyal English and Scots in place of the rebellious and recalcitrant Irish, who became tenants of their own land. The merchants prudently fortified Derry and decreed that henceforth the city would be known as Londonderry. This imposition of a new ruling class, Protestant in religion, over the Catholic inhabitants, sowed the seeds of the religious apartheid which has bedeviled Ulster ever since. The streets are gay with bunting, but the writing on the walls of Belfast is the graffiti of intolerance and bigotry, of ignorance and fear. Protestant exhortations to remember the past are matched by Catholic declarations of secession and anarchy. The Protestant hero, King William of Orange, brightens the walls of the drab streets, whilst dark threats are aerosoled beneath the Irish tricolour. Despite the artistic exuberance, in the Protestant streets only 3 colours are used, the red, white and blue of the Union Jack, the flag which the Ulsterman holds dearer than any Englishman and which he reveres with an almost embarrassing degree of loyalty. In 1689, Ulster became involved in the last-ditch efforts of the deposed and exiled James II of England to regain his throne. James's avowal of his Catholic faith had brought him into conflict with the English people and Parliament, and he intended to use Ireland as a base for his recovery of England. He landed in the south and gathered together an army of Irishmen sympathetic to both his cause and his faith. He moved north to concentrate his forces at Londonderry. Inside the walled city, the Protestants prepared to withstand the attack of the Catholic army. The city, so well fortified by Londoners, was now besieged by an English king. "13 of the city's apprentice boys saw an enemy regiment approaching the open gates. The official guard seemed at a loss, so the boys grabbed their keys, slammed the gates, and locked them, just in time to prevent James's men from getting into the city. And so began one of the most famous sieges in history. The action of the apprentice boys is commemorated by the Protestants in Ulster with undying fervour to this very day. Nearly 10,000 people died of starvation and disease during the 105 days of the siege. During those terrible days, a handful of chickweed cost a penny, a quart of horse's blood a shilling, and the same price bought a rat which had been fattened on human corpses. At last, 3 ships of the Royal Navy broke through the wooden boom that had been built across the river, and relief was brought to the nearly dead city. A few days later, James's army struck camp and marched away, and the following year was utterly defeated at the Battle of the Boyne by King William of Orange. And ever since that summer of 1690, when the Catholics were put to flight, the Protestants have celebrated as if only yesterday the anniversary of a battle fought so long ago that in any other country its memory would lie undisturbed on the dusty shelves of the National Archives. This public rubbing of the Catholic nose in the unhappy mists of history is a continual challenge which the Orangemen are too proud and too frightened to let drop. Proud of their descent from the people who supported King Billy, William of Orange, frightened by what they still see as a menace from the Catholic minority. The big parade in Belfast passes off peacefully amidst a welter of self-congratulation on both sides. But everyone knows it was the thin khaki line of the British troops which kept them apart. For it is a sad fact that such uneasy peace as does exist in the trouble spots of Ulster is because of the presence of the British Army. It's great fun for the kids to find real live soldiers at the corner of the street, but the grown-ups have to be kept apart by this Berlin Wall of barbed wire and breeze blocks. The army built it through the sensitive area where Catholic and Protestant streets adjoin to prevent the violence and destruction which erupts along this unbelievable frontier. To cross the barricades often means being subjected to the indignity of a search. But the army takes no chances. It's learned to keep a watchful eye on the city and its people, to see and be seen.
What I want you to do is have a 2-vehicle mobile patrol. Tasks: look for any suspicious activity, look for any suspicious objects in doorways, which might be bombs. If people are worried, assure them that things are all right and they can go about their normal business. Signals, normal wavelength. You're 3-1 Alpha, 3-1 Bravo.
Whilst Echo Bravo and Echo Charlie thread their way through the city traffic, other members of Belfast's veteran peacekeeping force, the 2nd Battalion, the Queen's Regiment, rehearse yet again putting on their grotesque but practical riot control gear. Bulletproof waistcoat, helmet and visor, riot shield and battle, and CS gas, loathsome but less bloody than bullets in a tight corner. Trouble in central Belfast. The army scrambles. Now 2 Queens races to give help at that most hideous manifestation of the terrorists' art, a bomb explosion in a crowded street.
39, roger, out.
Here is the distillation of the agony of Ulster. The bomb went off in the entrance to a busy bank. 30 people are injured, some critically. Who put the bomb there? The Protestants will say it was a typically Catholic act. The Catholics that it was planted to make them look the villains. It might have been the IRA or even some lunatic with a grudge against banks. No one knows, or if they do, they are not telling. The army cordons off the area to prevent possible trouble as anger rises over the outrage. And meantime, 30 innocent passers-by go off to hospital. After the excitement, the routine. A foot patrol of the Royal Fusiliers sets out from their command post in the Catholic Falls Road area. Like policemen on the beat, getting to know at first hand their district and its people. The Army's job here is a thankless one. As they've done so often before in the trouble spots of the world, British troops have to stand between 2 bitterly opposed factions, keep them from tearing each other apart and take what comes. They can be certain of only one thing, that whatever they do, one side or the other will find reason to condemn it. Right now, he's in favor and the coffee's very welcome. By tonight, it could be petrol bombs and obscenities the locals are dishing out along the peace line. High above the muddy puddles, it's time to eat on the roof of one of Belfast's new tower blocks of flats. From vantage points like these, the army continues its watch over the city. Not much that goes on in the streets below is missed up here. To try to allocate blame for what has happened is fruitless. Irishmen are passionate in their political convictions, and their stormy past has given them the habit of looking over their shoulders at history in a way which is difficult for an outsider to understand. The Ulster Protestants look fearfully to what they see as the menace of the Catholic hordes to the south. For Northern Ireland is unique in possessing Britain's only land frontier. Deep in the heart of the countryside, the border twists and turns for over 200 miles, enclosing the 6 counties which comprise the province. Set up by the Act of Partition in 1921, to the tourist it's just a curious oddity of administration. A friendly official wave, almost spoiling the fun of being challenged at a frontier on British soil. And it's all very Irish. This farmer has land on both sides of the border. The stream divides the north from the south. His cows graze on Republican grass and are driven home to be milked in Ulster. It's easy to laugh, but on the left bank of that rivulet is a free health service, cheap food, and all the benefits of being part of Britain. On the right, there is a powerful church with a strong say in matters of government, family planning is illegal, and divorce is not permitted. And that is what the row is all about. The painful amputation of most of the old province of Ulster almost 50 years ago was designed to separate the Protestant north from the Catholic south. But some Catholics still lived in the north. And because they have notoriously large families, the Protestants were scared they might eventually outnumber them and would clamour for a unified Ireland once again. So they tried to ensure that they would never achieve economic or political power. The Catholics often found it hard to get the better paid jobs, or often any jobs at all. Because they were poor, they had to live where they could. This meant in crowded slums with political boundaries drawn so that they could only elect a minority of representatives to their local government. And at last, this was the result. It is a sad reflection on the human scene that nothing focuses public attention with such eye-splitting clarity as a naked display of violence. And while the cities boil over with anger and frustration and despair, the desperately beautiful Ulster countryside lies just without, green and languorous and inviting. Out here in the cool, clear air, it's hard to believe that the tensions of the crowded towns really exist. Like many other countries, one of Ulster's important invisible exports is her natural beauty, which visitors come from all over the world to enjoy. Hedges, fragrant with an abundance of wild flowers, overlook great sweeps of golden sand, and the sea carries on a laughing flirtation with the rocks and coves of this wild, deserted coast. Out here, a footbridge is an eccentric mechanical confection designed to test your courage and daring. There are incredible natural phenomena like the famous Giant's Causeway. Modern science has proved that it was caused by the rapid cooling of molten lava millions of years ago. But everyone knows a giant built it just the same. This Ulster countryside is beautiful and remote. Remote from the economic magnet of the southeast and the industries which are a modern nation's lifeblood. It has long been a depressed area. Quite simply, there have never been enough jobs to go round. The unemployment level has always been far above the national average. But many years before the violence in the streets had put Belfast and Londonderry into the headlines, a quieter and less exciting battle had been joined. The battle to bring fresh industry and more jobs to the province, to defeat the soul-destroying stagnation of unemployment and hopelessness. It's not easy to persuade a hard-headed industrialist that it's in his interest to build his new factory in what to him is a distant corner of the United Kingdom. And the world's businessmen have many nations competing for their investment. Ulster's Minister of Commerce spends much time visiting these men to persuade them to bring their industry and their jobs to Northern Ireland. And slowly but steadily, the results are taking shape. The jobs are being created on the new industrial estates, in the giant new plants which proudly bear famous international names. Shipbuilding, one of Belfast's traditional industries. This too has had a powerful injection of capital investment. The great yards of Harland and Wolff have a new dry dock large enough for the giant supertankers demanded by the world's mercantile fleets. The workers here are the lucky ones. They have jobs. It was these men who voted overwhelmingly for the abolition of religious discrimination at work. It could be that a lot of Ulster's bitter politics are the result of having too little to do and too little to spend, when argument and mischief are the only way of enlivening a dull and meaningless existence. And after years of neglect, the slums are going too. Not quickly enough for those who still live in them, so near and yet so far from the quiet hills which encircle every Ulster town. For it's ironic that this green and pleasant land has some of the worst slums in the United Kingdom. On the city outskirts, the new houses are going up, to be allocated on a system of points where need is the sole criterion and a man's politics or religion are of no account. So now the journey home at the end of the day can mean the same way for both Catholic and Protestant, when once the downing of tools in the factory where they worked side by side meant separation, as the Catholics went to their parts of the city and the Protestants to theirs. These are the scars of the summer savagery. Once these were homes. People lived in them, loved and laughed in them. Now they bear ruined witness to the heartbreaking and senseless destruction which Ulster can so ill afford. Even a few factories have been destroyed, though industry generally has gone on as usual and even achieved record exports. Ulster is unique in the United Kingdom in possessing its own parliament. It sits at Stormont, acknowledged as one of the world's finest settings for administrative power. But the grandeur is misleading. Stormont has powers over a community no greater than that of many a British local council. For the rest, it must look to Westminster, where Ulster sends 12 MPs. The future of any country lies in its children, and children are born without the prejudice and intolerance of their parents. But sadly, in Ulster, this defect is soon remedied. Catholic children go only to Catholic schools by decree of the Church. They actually learn their history from a different textbook to Protestants. They are made to feel different from the day they can think. They are caught in the vicious circle of bigotry and hatred. And in the red, white and blue world of the Protestant poor, the training in apartheid is no less assiduous. The only mixing these kids are likely to do with their Catholic counterparts is to swap a blow or a curse. The boundary of their playground is the barricade put up by the authorities to keep their grown-ups from tearing each other apart. But there is a good life which Ulster has to offer its young. In the grounds of a 12th century castle on the shores of Lough Erne, scouts from Belfast are at summer camp. Although the past crowds thickly on every slope, a constant reminder of unsettled scores, the hope for the young is that despite everything, they will have the good sense to renounce the vendetta mentality of their parents and leave behind the obsession with a harrowing past, which is the historical millstone that generations of Ulstermen have bequeathed to their children. In Belfast, the aftermath of the bomb is cleared away. Life returns to normal as it has to. The problem of reconciling the darkly divided people remains. It has two solutions. One, short-term and practical, is being tackled vigorously. The other is infinitely more difficult to solve. Its solution lies in the hearts and minds of the people of Ulster. Then, and only then, can the troops go home.